Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps, a program where we talk about the realities of the suffering and persecuted church around the world. Zimbabwe is a beautiful country in the south of the African continent, home of the Victoria Falls and vast, breathtaking national parks. However, the country has suffered terribly since gaining independence in 1980. Since the death of its president, Robert Mugabe, in 2019, many were hoping for positive change. This doesn't look to be the case. Unemployment is still high, and the number of those in extreme poverty is still rising. Harare is the capital of Zimbabwe, and it's its most populous city. Here to talk about some of the issues that the Catholic Church faces in Zimbabwe and some of the issues specifically of the Diocese of Harare, it is my privilege to welcome Archbishop Robert Ndlovu. Your Excellency, welcome to our program.
Thank you very much.
Your Excellency, you have been a bishop since 1999. Can you tell us a little bit about your vocation and growing up in Zimbabwe? How did you hear your call to become a priest?
Well, it was something that sometimes is very difficult to understand even for oneself what will happen. But I was very much close to the Spanish Missionaries Institute. Those were the missionaries that were working in my place. And I went to a boarding school there. Somehow I got involved with the priests, and I got attracted to them. There was one priest who was very, Father John, was called John Vilescas, a Spanish priest, was very close to us and asked me to help him translate even the Bible from into the local language, which is my mother tongue, which is Ndebele. So somehow with that interaction and that, I got interested in priesthood.
So it was the testimony of a missionary what got you interested?
Yes, definitely it was, yeah.
Your Excellency, your family was always Christian? You grew up in a Christian environment?
Not really. My mother, yes, was always a Catholic, a Christian, but my father, no. My father was a Seventh-day Adventist. It is by his background. He was not practicing though. So I was not baptized when I was young. In fact, I was baptized already when I was doing my fourth year schooling. And I started doing my own catechism and so forth. And then I was baptized then.
Describe a little bit the region where you live so that we can imagine the landscape, the people.
Yeah, it's a very rural kind of place, countryside, and I really grew up in a rural area. I used only to maybe once in a while visit my father in town, and that it was Bulawayo. I come from the western part of Zimbabwe. I used to visit there once in a while, maybe every 2 years, just to be with my father rather, maybe for a week or two during holidays. Then I would go back home. But otherwise, it was more during the holidays when I was home, just hitting cattle like any rural young boy in the area. Really, it was living with the basic, just doing some farming, subsistence farming, and so that would help. I'm the second born in a family of 8, 3 boys and 5 girls.
So it was important for you to yes. collaborate with your father in the farm.
Exactly. And my father also not a educated man, just working in a factory where they were producing soap and so forth. And he was a machine operator there, very likely by way of income. But he had quite a good head of cattle, and from time to time he would sell one to help us go to school. And that's how I got educated. And when it came to secondary school, it was a bit of a struggle for him. But I must accept that at one stage I didn't like to go to school. And so my father took me into the boarding school when I went to secondary school. That I had a close contact with the Spanish priest. And then I came to be very close to this priest who was called Father John Velasquez, who was into translating the Bible into my own local language. So when others were doing work...
The whole Bible?
Yes,
you collaborated in the translation?
Not the whole of it, but there are some places where, since you are Spanish speaking, he would use to take some of us, the boys, to come and help him with the pronunciations and the way it is done. Is it the correct word in Ndebele? So that's how I came to be close.
What a meaningful task you had at such a young age. You know, it's so transcendental.
Yeah.
So for this child growing in rural Zimbabwe, was it a surprise when you got a call in 1999 to become a bishop of the Catholic Church?
It was a surprise, because even when I wanted to go to the seminary, my father refused. As I said, my father was not Catholic. He refused me. So he took me out of school for 2 years. I was at home. After 2 years, I still went to him to ask whether I could go to the seminary. That's when he said, okay, you can go. But he did that with thinking that I'll go back. But I didn't go back. So until I became a priest, and afterwards he was very happy that I became a priest. And then 99, well, in a way maybe it was a surprise. Maybe, yes, it was a surprise, because these things come, you never know. My only joy was in being a priest. So when you
were working in a parish, you were...
No, I was not working in a parish. In fact, I was ordained in 1983. I went to work in a very rural parish for 2 years. After that, my bishop asked me if I could go for further studies. I went to Kenya, Eastern Africa, Catholic University of Eastern Africa. I did there my licentiate in biblical theology. So when I went back to my diocese, which was Wange diocese, I was assigned to work in a parish for 1 year. After that, I was asked to go and teach in the seminary.
Okay, so you were a teacher for seminarians?
Yes, I remained there, in fact, in the seminary for 10 years. 2 of those years, I was a vice rector, and the 6 of those years, I was the rector of the seminary, the major seminary, national major seminary. Then it was after those 10 years in the seminary that I was asked to be a bishop in 1999. Yes.
What is your episcopal motto?
I don't know. I just want to be there for the people. That's real. I have a passion of just to be there with the people, especially the simple people. Because as I said, I grew up in a rural area. I started working in a very rural parish. And I came to have this kind of, see that simplicity of the rural people as really quite something valuable for me. And up to today, I keep it up. I am now in town, but I still have that even. I cherish the weekends when I can go out to the rural areas and encounter the simple people and work with them.
Are we talking about first evangelization here, Your Excellency, or is it people that already have been baptized and they know a little bit of the faith, but they need more contact and more formation? Or you're really going to the peripheries and baptize people for the first time?
I would say when I started my work as a priest, the first parish that I worked in, by and large, it was first evangelization. You could meet people there. They are coming for mass, but the man comes with his 2 wives. And he said, I want to be a Catholic. It was a very difficult situation.
Of course.
Yeah, then we didn't know, should I deny this person the sacrament of baptism or not? Or should I say he should divorce one of the wives?
Which is very hard to say.
Is very hard.
You know, forget this one, forget the children.
Yes.
And
so it was a question there that really we would discuss even with the other priests, with the situation like this, how do you do it? And occasionally we would ask the bishop. And I know One time when we asked him, he said, well, if you ask me as a bishop, I would say follow the canon law. But you ask me as a pastor, I say follow your conscience.
Yes.
Yes. So there are cases where after consulting the community, we would kind of give what you call exceptions and receive these people into the faith.
That's the beauty of the church, really, when we can see the mother face of the church in cases like this, Your Excellency, where, yes, we know what the law says and what is important to know, and then at the same time, we know the circumstances of the people, and we want to bring them to God. Now, Your Excellency, when I was preparing the interview, to me it was fascinating to read about Zimbabwe. Unfortunately, it's the same story that we hear in so many countries in Africa, with a lot of poverty. Your country has been in the last places of development in the continent. But at the same time, I found a very interesting data that you have one of the highest literacy rates in Africa.
Yes.
I mean, this is quite contrasting. In one hand, you have educated people, but the other hand, many of these people live in extreme poverty.
Yes, it was really the whole after independence. So with a long war of liberation. After independence in 1980, the government then made this decision to try to empower people with education. And the then president, at the time was Prime Minister Robert Mugabe, himself having been a teacher and so forth. And so he really went into education, started opening new schools, and it empowered the people in terms of education. But then even the economy started coming up very well. But it was then, as we moved towards 2000, when we had this land reform, which really unsettled a lot of things in the country. But maybe what we still ask questions about is the method that was used, that maybe a better method could have been used than one which was taken.
What was the problem?
Well, the problem that there's now acquisition of land, people were driven out, the commercial farmers, and then replaced by the locals, which was okay, because by time of independence, 80%, I would say maybe, of arable land was more with this minority, which was then the white settlers there. And the rest of the people had been pushed into the marginalized areas, which were not fertile at all. So the government wanted to reverse that. Of course, there was a resistance, but then they did it by force. So that in itself, in fact, destroyed the basis of agriculture in the country.
Yeah, the infrastructure.
Exactly. But you see that people empowered with education after independence. There's no question about it, and we have a level of illiteracy is quite high. But with then a time going on now, agriculture going down, and then some professionals not getting jobs and so forth. And then there was also what they call structural reform of the economy and so forth. People started leaving the country, the educated people going to other countries.
Yeah, that's another topic that I want to talk about with you, Your Excellency. Migration.
Yes.
A lot of people are leaving Zimbabwe. How does this affect families and therefore how does this affect the church?
It's tragic in a way for families. We see that every day, that children, quite a number of children are left sometimes with relatives, the extended family.
Because the parents have to
look for
support them somehow.
So not only that, you may find that it is also some of these families, one spouse remains in Zimbabwe, another spouse goes out of the country. And the end result sometimes, family is broken.
Yes.
Even the marriage is broken. Children could grow up without maybe a father figure or a mother figure. And that is becoming tragic. It affects the church now. If family life has broken down, it does affect the church very, very much so. And even the support to the church. Because The last census, which was done this year, a few months ago, they said estimate that 1 million Zimbabweans are out of the country. But we think that that is only what is recorded. We easily would say maybe that double that number is out of the country. And most of these people are professionals. Quite a good number of professionals.
It's a tragedy, Your Excellency, because you invest in their education,
exactly.
And it's education that is not
benefiting
for the country.
Yes.
Your country has been in kind of a political turmoil and some social upheaval because of the president that stayed there for many years. And you have been very clear about defending human rights.
Yes.
During all this situation. What is exactly what you're defending, and what are you being so outspoken about?
Well, you know, in the process, obviously, we had the people fought for independence, which was a noble cause, and we really salute them for that. But we felt that over the years, after independence, maybe even those people in power were no longer really serving the people. We felt that they were more serving themselves. And politics became really a situation about whom you know, in terms of who benefits from what and so forth. So we thought that corruption also came up in a strong way. The country is very rich in terms of minerals.
You know, it used to be known as the bread basket.
Exactly.
And then what happened?
This issue of agriculture, the disruption in agriculture, in the
combined with the cancer of corruption. That politics.
Really, because even those people benefited from the farms. We have to realize, with the best of intentions, these people come from the rural, set up arable land, bring them into the farms. They didn't have the knowledge. They didn't have the capital to utilize that land.
Yes.
And therefore, even with what they really wanted, they didn't have it. They didn't have the tools to produce. So it remained still with just growing enough to eat, but not enough to export. So obviously, the country went down. Now, that is one of the things that we are not happy about. How to empower these people there. It's not their fault. So they started cutting trees just to make a living and all this kind of situation. And as I said, corruption really became an issue, a cancer into the society. We realized that some of our leaders really were just getting the resources and helping themselves, not caring about the poor people, especially in the rural setup. And this became a problem. Then we started pointing out that this situation has to be addressed. And this is where we think that maybe our politics went wrong. And violence started being the order of the day in our political kind of discourse. And that is what we still are fighting again at this time.
I read an article, Your Excellency, where they were mentioning that that you yourself were criticized by some of the official media.
Yes.
For some comments, some declarations that you did. What happened?
You know, it was 2 years ago when we issued a pastoral letter in which again we're condemning corruption and some issues that were taking place in our country. Well, I happened at that time to have been the president of the Bishops' Conference. And therefore, they attributed the content of that pastoral letter to me as a person.
Okay.
And our interpretation was that it was a way of trying to divide the conference, because the attack on me became more ethnic. You see, this was point that I am the bishop, president of the conference, and this is why I said these things, because I belong to a different kind of tribe, which was definitely not the case. Because when we write pastoral letters, it is a joint.
Of course. It's not an individual voice.
It's a collective kind
Right.
of work.
Your Excellency, it's amazing how always in Africa the tribal card is placed and misused in politics.
You see, I think what really brought about the tribal issue is that in the pastoral letter, we did make reference, I said we did as a co-bishops, we did make reference to issues that are still dividing the nation. One of the issues is what happened immediately after independence, what people called the Kukuraundi or 5th Brigade operations that happened when the two main parties that had fought the war had their differences. And then there was armed conflict. And so that still is a point dividing issue in our politics. So we did allude to that in the pastoral letter, that there's need to address that issue. And that issue so happened that I come from that tribe.
Right.
So it came up, as I said, but it was totally misplaced, unfortunately.
And a manipulation of...
Yeah, it was really, I think we felt that it was trying to divide the conference, but it didn't work.
During all this political turmoil and trying to fight this corruption endemic situation, some economic sanctions happened to Zimbabwe from the European Union and from the United States.
Yes.
And sadly, it's always the people, not one individual in particular, who pay the consequences of these sanctions. How did this affect the development of Zimbabwe?
Unfortunately, we have even voiced this different fora, that sometimes the West thinks that the economic sanctions are hurting the elite. In fact, it's to playing in their hands, because that becomes an excuse.
Yes.
Even when it comes to corruption issues, everything is blamed, no, because of sanctions. Yet the people are in power who have the means, the connections, are living a wealthy life. They have everything they need. It is the poor people who cannot now, who are feeling the pinch, because if there's no investment in the country, no employment, and all this kind of situation, big companies that could have invested in the country, now they're afraid if they invested there, they are sanctioned. In fact, you have even the children of these elite, political elite, if you want to call them that way, they're starting abroad. Themselves, they get sick, they fly out to go for treatment. But we go into our hospitals where equipment that is obsolete, which is meant to save the poor, those are the ones suffering. So the sanctions really, the sooner they are removed, the better, because they are not really achieving the intended purpose.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right, Your Excellency, because then it becomes an excuse and
exactly.
Whatever is happening, oh, well, it's the sanctions.
It's the sanctions.
When in fact it's the
more
wrongdoing of
people. There's more to it than that.
But let's talk now about souls, about
yes.
Your children, your spiritual children.
Yes.
In your diocese, what is the, let's say, your pastoral priority or challenge?
Well, at the moment, obviously, we have poverty, that is true, that we see glaring at our faces. Even if we go out there, you see people, they're trying their best, but they have no means even to support the church. They really have no. Communities are growing. Definitely people are coming to church in their numbers, great numbers, big numbers. So that even if I go out and I am having maybe confirmations, we hardly use churches, our buildings there to struck. We have to go outside.
Because the crowd is so large.
Yes, you go in some places, you go there, you have 1,000 people, 2,000 people.
Beautiful.
Just outside. So it becomes a challenge now even for them to support the church. That is where maybe the big problem comes. These people are there, but they want to pray, but the church cannot only run on prayers. Sometimes you need also to be supported financially. And these people find themselves, because they are not employed, themselves, they're struggling to get even food. Now we're having the issue even of drought quite often. I think it has to do with climate change, what have you. Sometimes they look to the church. Can you help us? Where people, their communities are starving and all this. It becomes quite a difficult situation. But at the same time, people have their faith. We want now to build the Christian communities. What we need now for them is to, even these people come in their big numbers, that's true, but they need formation.
Yes.
To understand their faith, they really need to be formed in their faith, so that even in difficult moments of their lives, they don't resort just to giving up their faith, start looking for solutions somewhere else, or going back to their traditional ways of doing things, or look for maybe cheap answers, like go to the Pentecostals where they think of this gospel of prosperity,
promising prosperity.
Yes, yet in fact it does not solve anything. And we see that during times of crises, illness, deaths, and so forth, that our people really struggle to maintain their faith, and the forces there that face them in that moment is to feel that maybe the church here has no solution. We bet. But it is the poor catechesis sometimes that we have, and we try to see how best can we have proper formation for our people, so that really
deepen their faith.
Deep faith, so that it is a true conversion. When they come to church, there's a true conversion. They really have put all their trust in Christ and not in other forces that they think can be a redemption in their lives. Yeah.
Your Excellency, thank you so much, and I'm sure that our audience, our viewers will be motivated to support the church in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being with us in another episode of Where God Weeps. If you want to know more about the work that the church is doing in Zimbabwe, we invite you to contact information at the end of this program. Thank you, and God bless.